adjourned the special meeting that was held at 4 o'clock and then moved to our regular city council meeting at 6 o'clock on June 2nd, 2020. Welcome to the meeting. This meeting is being held in accordance with the Brown Act as currently in effect under the State Emergency Services Act, the Governor's Emergency Declaration related to COVID-19, and the Governor's Executive Order N-29-20 issued on March 17, 2020, that allows attendance by members of the City Council, city staff, and the public to participate and conduct the meeting by video conference. Video conference locations are not open to the public. Just to make sure you are in the right place, this meeting ID is 912-8349-6257. The password is 697, excuse me, I'm going to say the password again, 697653. That's 697653. When I open the public comment period, please use your raised hand feature, or if you're calling in on audio, press *9 if you like to connect. That will alert the staff that you have a public comment that you would like to make. Please wait your turn, and once brought into the meeting, please also state your name and city of reference for the record. You will have 2 minutes to make your remarks. As before, we request that you honor that this is a public business meeting and that we ask you to be courteous and use proper language, and remember that there are a lot of people who are listening in and respect their rights as well. We will begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. Would you please help me and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you for your help. Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Councilmember Francois.
Here.
Councilmember Silva.
Here.
Councilmember Waddell.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Wilk.
Here.
Mayor Haskew.
Here.
Let the record reflect all council members are in attendance.
I have a special request as mayor, and that is I am requesting that as we think about a moment in time a year ago that has reminded us of our concern for all who suffer from mental illness, including their families, their neighbors, and their friends. You are in the hearts and minds of our city leaders and our whole community, and this is addressed to the Hall family. We therefore ask for a moment of silence in recognition of the Hall's family's grief over the loss of their son, Miles. Thank you. Next on our agenda is the consent calendar. Does any?
Mayor, did we need to adjourn or reconvene or whatever it was from our special meeting?
We did adjourn it. I adjourned it first before I did anything else, but I can officially restate that we have adjourned our special meeting from 4 o'clock and are carrying it forward to June 9th to complete additional the items that weren't discussed at today's special session. Any further questions from the council?
No, thank you for clarifying.
Madam Mayor, if I may, I would just note that it's June 9th at 4 o'clock is that we've continued it to. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Yes. Thank you. All right. Now, next on the agenda is the consent calendar. Does any council member wish to pull an item for discussion? Councilmember Francois?
Yes, Mayor, I'd like to pull item number 2D.
2D, thank you. Anybody else?
Move approval of the consent calendar 2A through C, E, and F.
Oh, I appreciate that, but we still have to have public comment, and I'm about to ask for that. So is there any member of the public that wishes to make any comment on any item on the consent calendar? City Clerk?
It doesn't look like we have any live public comments, but I do have a written public comment regarding consent calendar item 2E.
2E, all right. Would you please read that into the record?
Just a moment. This comment is from Scott Rafferty of Walnut Creek. It is a matter of concern that on June 2nd, the council is accepting the attached update on public safety dated March 21st, 2020, when the current emergency has only just begun. In the intervening period of more than 2 months, civil unrest has become increasingly foreseeable. If, as the police chief claimed in yesterday's meeting, there was adequate preparation for the possibility of mass violence and looting, the council should have been updated on those plans. The date and scope of this update suggests that the chief needs to provide greater transparency, including a much more detailed and candid explanation of any preparatory actions taken or lessons learned from the massive damage that our city sustained on Sunday. In contrast to Contra Costa County, Walnut Creek has no published emergency operations plan. The police have issued no transparency report nor any annual report since 2018. According to the city's community crime map, no incidents occurred downtown on May 31st, and the threat of home invasion cited in support of a citywide curfew did not materialize. If the city is suppressing this data, the map should so indicate. Earlier this year, the chief selected an advisory committee, but does not have authority to review or investigate any issue. The damage sustained in recent days has enduring consequences for our community and highlights the need for a more independent community review board. The board should not only be charged with reporting to the council on any allegations regarding particular officers or events, but should also conduct oversight for the council on the effectiveness of the police department in achieving its essential purpose of keeping Walnut Creek safe and protecting property, including our retail infrastructure. And that is Scott Rafferty, Walnut Creek.
Okay, that is really and should have been disassociated with our consent calendar. It had nothing to do with what it is. It should have been written, and I'm not upset with you, clerk. I'm pulling full responsibility on the author. That should have been part of our public comment. So I am going to pretend that we heard it under public comment, and therefore now, Councilmember Waddell, would you please go forward with your motion?
Move approval of consent calendar 2A through C, E, and F.
Second.
May I have a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Waddell.
Aye.
Councilmember Francois.
Aye.
Councilmember Silva.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Wilk.
Aye.
And Mayor Haskew.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you. And now for the item that was skipped. Councilmember Francois, do you have anything that you would like to say?
Can't hear you, Mayor.
Sorry.
I heard you, Mayor, and thank you. This was item 2D is the early retirement incentive program. And I think I, along with most of my council colleagues, wholeheartedly agree with the goal of this program. But I have some concerns that some of the items and the pre-qualification requirements, the September 1st retirement date, and the limit on 5 sworn personnel seem arbitrary, a bit arbitrary to me, and a little overly restrictive. And if we're trying to incentivize some of our higher paid employees to take early retirement, it seems to me we should at least have a backup plan if we don't achieve 5 sworn personnel taking advantage of this program. The program itself says the application doesn't guarantee approval. So it's just providing more flexibility to allow for additional sworn personnel to apply for this program if the magic number of 5, which was kind of an arbitrary number developed by staff, if that number is not achieved by the June 18th application date.
I can address that if you would like, Mayor and Councilmember Francois.
Yes, please.
So let me provide some context relative to the early retirement incentive offer. As was agendized for tonight, which I believe we intend to defer until next Tuesday, is an item on discussion about a $12 million hole in our budget related to the general fund and another $3.5 million related to our parking fund. So overall, we're looking at about $15 to $16 million we are going to have to reduce from our budget. Unfortunately, at this point in time, it appears as if layoffs will be likely part of the budget balancing solutions. We are looking at many different solutions and want to try to limit or possibly eliminate altogether the possibility of layoffs. But it doesn't appear that that's going to be achievable at this point in time. The idea behind offering an early retirement incentive is if folks are thinking of retiring, that they would do it sooner than later so as to create more vacancies, which may allow others who would be otherwise laid off to slot into other positions. So the idea being that we would still be able to reduce the same number of positions that we could. It just increases the likelihood that we would avoid anybody actually losing a job, and we could realize savings through the elimination of vacant positions. So we are required to adopt a budget by the end of the month. Now, obviously, we're under some extraordinary circumstances related to the coronavirus, as well as what's happening with respect to civil unrest and what's occurred here on both Sunday and Monday. We are going to do our best to adopt that budget by end of June. If we were to defer, it would likely not be more than a couple weeks beyond that, as we do legally have to have spending plans so that we can continue operations. So the idea behind the quick turnaround on the early retirement proposal is to get folks to decide relatively soon so that we know by the end of June or shortly thereafter if we can back off of having to lay off some folks. So that's the reason for the sense of urgency. While it may appear that the dates or numbers are a bit arbitrary, there was actually a fair bit of thought that went into that. You know, ideally, we would like to have all decisions made relative to early retirement, you know, within the next couple of weeks and certainly before June 30th. But there are legal requirements in terms of the number of days that employees are allowed to review, consider, and then ultimately even revoke their decision up until the end. And so that's how we got to the end of August, is when you factor in those legally required timeframes. The other piece that we are looking at is trying to balance incentivizing folks who are likely going to retire at some point in the not too distant future to do so sooner in order to help save the jobs of some of their peers, but at the same time not be overly concentrated in any one area so as to negatively impact our operations and our ability to carry out our responsibilities. And in looking at our duties with respect to protecting the public safety, health, and welfare of the community, it was felt that if we had more than 5 sworn officers take early retirement within this time period, it may impede our duties, our abilities to carry out those responsibilities. So it was a cap. We don't want any more than that. If there are less than that, that would be fine, but it was intended to be a cap, not a minimum. And I think if we were to defer the time frame out beyond the August date, it may not help us achieve those goals of avoiding layoffs sooner than later, because we don't know if folks would take those early retirements. We do also, I would add that this is not a one and done. If we do find that not enough folks took it, and there may be folks that are interested is interested in it a little further down the road, we could offer another plan a couple months from now with alternate dates for our employees' consideration. But that's the background and the thought process behind how this was crafted.
And I appreciate that, City Manager, and I can tell that a lot of thought went into the development of the program. And I'm certainly not suggesting that we increase the limit beyond 5 sworn personnel. But to me, it seems like that there's a logical way to narrow it and limit it to those so you can still avoid layoffs in the broader category of employees, because this sort of backup plan would only apply to the sworn personnel. But it still strikes me as arbitrary. If you turn 50 and you're eligible for retirement on August 30th, you get the benefit of this program. But if you happen to turn 50 and are eligible for retirement on September 2nd, you don't. And it just seems like we should be building in some thinking ahead so that we don't and can have a backup with respect to the sworn personnel who are some of our higher paid employees. And we would still get a benefit in terms of cost savings if they were to apply for the early retirement this year, even if it's later this year.
Councilmember Silva.
Thank you, Mayor. I would just say that we had to do this in 2009, and I think it's important to have a clear deadline. And I don't think this is arbitrary. I think this has been carefully crafted by looking at what I will call an actuarial table of the employees who might be eligible for this. And I think we need to move so that we can give them the opportunity for early retirement, while at the same time giving security for those who might otherwise need to be laid off if we don't have the information we need as soon as possible. So I'm willing to move the item after others have been indicated.
Councilmember Waddell, you just muted yourself.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Dan, thank you, or Mr. City Manager, thank you for bringing this forward. As it relates to the 5 sworn personnel, what, independent of the age and the date time frame, I'm putting that to the side, that's not my concern, but although I understand where Mr. Francois is coming from. What is this actually saying? Does this mean that, let's just assume for the sake of argument, that 5 sworn police officers do choose to move forward and take us up on this option? Does this mean that we will be 5 police officers down? Does it mean that we will not be rehiring these positions? And then subsequent to that question is, what does this mean to the police officers' ability to meet the needs of the community? And then in conjunction with that, putting the side of the issues that we've had, of course, in the last couple of days, does this mean that they'll be able to meet it with the reduced number of police officers without any additional overtime? Or how is that equation coming into effect here?
Yeah, so a couple of things. I can answer part of this, and I may need to defer to our chief for additional input. You know, obviously this was crafted before the events that occurred here in the last 2 days. So obviously our world is evolving rather quickly. With respect to, I'm sorry, can you repeat the very beginning portion? I understood
4 questions in at once, yes.
Yeah.
So does this mean that from a policy perspective, that if 5 officers or whatever number of officers do choose to sign up, that those individuals, those positions would be negated and not rehired?
Yeah, so the answer, which may not be satisfactory, is it depends. And let me share with you more detail behind that. First is that we being management, we would review the applications for the early retirement program, do reserve the right to either authorize or deny those, as long as it is done in a fair and consistent manner, because we do need having services to provide in an operation to run. So first and foremost, that is one thing that we do have in mind that will be going forward. Additionally, with respect to the backfilling of officers, obviously this is related to budget. So for any position, not just focusing on the PD, the intent is that we would hold these positions vacant for as long as possible so that we could realize the savings from these vacancies, or allow other people who would be laid off to slot into these positions and then have that other position eliminated. That said, we do reserve the right based upon operational need as to whether or not we would backfill these positions. And one of the ways in which this program was designed, and I know that this may sound a lot, but it's really a financial piece, is that we are gearing the program towards the employees who are in the tier 1 or tier 2 retirement program, which candidly are more expensive employees. And those in the PEPRA program, or the program, the statewide pension reform that went into effect in 2013, are not eligible. So if we were to backfill folks in the PD department or elsewhere, it's a higher likelihood that it would be what we call PEPRA employees that would be slotting those positions, so there would be some savings. So that's a long way of saying it depends. We may hold them vacant, we may fill them. I think to state the obvious and to the point you're getting at, Councilmember Waddell, is that in light of recent events, Cam, how can we be assured that we can help secure the safety of our city if we were to have up to 5 additional vacancies in our police department? And that's where I think if there were applications for early retirement, we would review those obviously with the police chief to determine whether or not we should accept those. And if folks do decide to retire, whether or not we would backfill those as expeditiously as possible.
And I appreciate the first part of that explanation around, especially with the recent activity. No one can predict whether or not this is going to continue into the future. And I'm sure that you and the chief are putting the maximum effort and emphasis on ensuring that community safety. But as it relates to the second part of that question about moving forward, if 5 officers, if everything all of a sudden becomes hunky-dory and back to quote unquote normal, would we be able to continue to protect our city with being 5 officers down without any additional overtime?
Without additional overtime, I don't know that that would be like it. It would depend on what conditions are at that point in time. But the thought was that up to 5, we could sustain that for at least an intermittent period if things were to be more normal. But obviously, we are not in a normal circumstance currently. And I may defer to the chief if he's on the line here to offer more input, should he choose to do so.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. For the record, I'm Tom Chaplin, Police Chief. To Council Member Waddell's questions, those are sound questions. I did take a careful look at our staffing and attempted to find ways that we could contribute to the difficult budget challenges that we're facing in a way that did not diminish our ability to police this community. So in factoring that in, I considered that we have a natural attrition rate of 5 officers, but we've also been very forward thinking in ensuring that we have officers to replace those that are retiring. For example, we have 2 officers in the academy right now, though we don't expect them to actually be available full-time and on their own and in service for about 1 year. So I think there is an opportunity for us to allow people to take advantage of this program, to at some point backfill behind them, incur some savings as a result. But I won't say that, there won't be pain associated with some of those reductions in terms of what we are able to provide. We do provide additional services above and beyond simply having officers available to respond to calls for service and detectives. So the balance for me and for our leadership team in the police department is to ensure that we are filling those spots that provide us the ability to quickly respond to emergency calls for service while at the same time working to enhance the quality of life. In that 5 individuals that could be eligible, note that it also includes command personnel. And by including command personnel, there are perhaps periods of time where that position will not be filled. That has already happened. We have a vacant lieutenant position right now, and this could make that more difficult, but it is something that we believe we can pull off. But I recognize your concerns and share those same concerns about not diminishing our abilities in the field.
Thank you, Chief. One last question, Mr. City Manager. How is the financial impacts then calculated here? I take it this is like the best case scenario if the right individuals that will never be backfilled choose to come forward and volunteer to take early retirement. These dollar amounts would be theoretically achieved. But if there is any additional overtime, if cops take early retirement, overtime, recruiting costs, et cetera, are not included in these dollar amounts.
Yeah, so a couple of things I would add. I mean, we're focusing primarily on the PD positions, but this does apply to all positions citywide, with a handful of exceptions that were noted in the report. So it's not just for PD. We have the same potential consideration for other operations in the city as well. What's noted here is assuming that the position is not backfilled for the year. So to the extent that it is, it does diminish some of the savings. There's no doubt about that. And but that said, if we do hire at a much lower level, which may or may not be the case, but assuming for argument's sake that we do, there would be some savings, but it would be less. So it's hard not knowing who's going to apply, who's going to take it. And that is part of the challenge in terms of crafting one of these programs, is we don't have as much control as we might like. We do have to make this fairly generic, and obviously need to make it fair and equitable to various groups of employees based upon their operations and our job classifications. So to answer your question, I mean, the bottom line is we won't truly know how many savings we will realize until we know exactly which employees apply, which are approved, and then whether or not we decide to backfill the position or not. And again, our world has changed here considerably in the last couple of days. We were, focusing on this in light of the coronavirus pandemic and the budget challenges, not planning for at that point in time the civil unrest that we've seen the last few days.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. You.
Thank you. Any more questions? Any additional comments? I am looking for a motion.
Move to adopt the early retirement incentive program.
Second.
You? That was you.
That's me. Yes, Councilmember Waddell seconds.
And Frat. Matt, you've raised your hand. Is there a reason that you want to?
I'd just like to make some comments before we vote, and I appreciate it appears the direction that the council majority is going, but just to reiterate that in response to Councilmember Waddell's questions, the savings range that was presented in the staff report was between 500,000 and over $1 million. So to me, that's a reason to be more flexible in this program rather than less flexible. And to Councilmember Silva's point about the lack of, or the need for clear deadlines, I think with some pretty simple amendments, you could continue to have clear deadlines. If the magic number of 5 is not reached on June 18th, then you extend the deadline to June 30th and impose a termination deadline of December 31st. And then on Councilmember Waddell's point about the potential shortfall in staff, that is a very legitimate concern. I think that the people that are of retirement age in the police department most likely are not going to be the younger, spry police officers that are out on the street. Some of them will be, but also we have kind of the opportunity to backfill those positions with the pepper employees that aren't the tier 1 and the officers in the academy. So those are my comments. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Mayor. If I could just elaborate, I do not read this as a goal of eliminating a certain number of positions. I see it as a ceiling, not a floor, and not what we're trying to achieve. What we're trying to do is look at the people who are likely to retire because they are eligible. They have age eligibility, and they probably have 30 years in public service. If they're likely to retire, this incentivizes them to make the decision more quickly, which is why you want to incentivize that, such that they then make room for more juggling in the organization. And if we are going to lose those people anyway, you want to know earlier rather than later, because layoffs are going to occur. soon in order to achieve the budget objectives. We're not delaying until December or January to achieve layoff objectives. So that's why I moved the item.
I would just say, I think it's an incentive based on an arbitrary date. I agree with you, Councilmember Silva, that it's a ceiling, not a floor, but certain employees benefit from it just based on the nature of their birthday. And to me, that doesn't seem fair or equitable.
Yeah, that's kind of how life goes sometimes.
I tie you to the Social Security system, which just by virtue of your birthday, more people have to work longer. I also heard, and confirm, please, City Manager, that this isn't a done-in deal. It's just the first iteration of what may happen.
At this point in time, this is the first pass. We always have the option to create a second program or additional programs down the road, should we think it'd be advantageous to do so.
All right, I have a motion and a second. I do not see any more hands, blue or otherwise. So City Clerk, may we have the roll call, please?
Councilmember Silva,
Aye.
Councilmember Waddell, Councilmember Francois,
No.
Mayor Pro Tem Wilk,
Aye.
Mayor Haskew.
Aye.
Motion carries 4-1.
Thank you. That concludes the consent calendar. I'm proposing a change of order of our published agenda, and I am letting you know what that change is. That we first go to staff and council reports and announcements, and then we go to public comment. I need a head shake that everyone agrees that's acceptable. I see one.
I would know. I would suggest sticking with the agenda as published.
Okay, I see one kind of stay as is. I see two heads, yes. Mayor Pro Tem, did you choose that?
I just want to understand, is the reason for moving it because we're not going to be having the reports from staff and city manager afterwards? Will they will be making further comments afterwards?
There is the potential, yes.
As we can as well, if we so desire.
Yes.
Okay. I don't have a problem with it.
Okay. All right. Well, happily that guidance has happened, and so we are now going to staff and council announcements. That leads me to City Attorney Steve Magnus.
Madam Mayor, there were no reportable actions from closed session this evening, and I would note that the council considered the closed session item related to the litigation matter, but through the adjourned special meeting, we will be picking up the other item at the next meeting, at the continuation of this meeting on June 9th.
Thank you for that clarification. City Manager, do you have anything to share?
I do not at this point in time, Mayor.
Thank you. I'm looking for Justin. Do you have anything to report?
I'll keep it quick. We had our bi-monthly MCE board meeting. It's scheduled every month, but we happen to hit it every other month. In which point there was a lot of items that were covered, but the most important one is that we gave out the Charles F. McClaskin Award for 2019, and it just so happened to go to someone here, or a group here in Walnut Creek. It was the National Council for Jewish Women, the Contra Costa section, and they've done a whole bunch of things inside and outside of Rossmore in order to promote MCE. And if you're interested, they have a whole YMCE theme song that they created and they posted on YouTube. It is interesting and greatly appreciated, but I just wanted to bring that up and say congratulations to them once again.
Thank you very much. Matt, would you go next, please?
Thank you, Mayor. I attended the May 28th meeting of the Board of Directors of Recycle Smart along with Councilmember Silva, where we adopted our annual budget and also awarded student scholarships to a number of students throughout the district, including Los Lomas High School senior Elena Rich, who received a $2,500 scholarship for implementing a 3-stream recycling program at Los Lomas and navigated some bureaucracy while doing it, and I wanted to congratulate her and her family. She's going to be, she's going on to UC Davis, and I hope that her good work gets continued on by some of the younger students at Los Lomas. And then I had the privilege of serving along with all the fellow council members in the virtual Memorial Day celebration, and I want to thank the mayor for the opportunity. It was, I found moving and poignant, and it wasn't quite the same as being in Civic Park, but I thought we gave it our college try, and I hope that it was received by the residents with the spirit that it was intended to. Thank you.
I would say from what I've heard, your wish was fulfilled, and people were very appreciative of all of your efforts. So thank you, Councilmember Silva.
Thank you very much, Mayor. I will build on what Councilmember Francois just said to thank the mayor and city staff for the work on the virtual Memorial Day. That was a lot of work to produce in a very short period of time. And I know it was appreciated by the community because I did the outreach to the senior living facilities that ordinarily would send people in their buses to attend the ceremony. And they were very pleased to know that there was now a way, that we offered a way for their residents to participate in Memorial Day. And they did let me know, a couple of them, that their residents are becoming quite proficient on their devices. So that's good to know as well. I will mention that the Finance Committee of the Council has been very active, and we've had 2 meetings since we last met. And now that we are continuing that item till next week, I'm sure we will have many more meetings coming up. The census continues in the community. We have reached 75.3% household response rate. We still have a few census tracts that are lagging behind. If you have not yet filled out the census, please go to online to do it at 2020census.gov. And I will mention, I know the mayor's going to report on the ad hoc committee for the rebound program that we adopted 10 days ago. I will mention that yesterday afternoon, Governor Newsom and his staff held a Zoom meeting, actually, with the mayors of the 13 large cities, as well as the mayors of the cities that had experienced civil unrest over the weekend, and that included Walnut Creek. I was also invited to participate in that meeting as an officer for the League of Cities. It was an interesting conversation. A lot of issues. The reason for the call was there had been a disparity of ways, a disparate number of ways, that people from different cities were reaching out, seeking mutual aid, as well as wondering how the National Guard would be deployed. And they wanted to reiterate the best way to do it. I am fully confident, as the mayor and I discussed afterward, that our chief, Tom Chaplin, knows exactly what to do to reach out for mutual aid as well as for National Guard assistance. Another point of the conversation, though, was after the short-term discussion of how to manage the civil unrest that's occurring across the state, what do we do for a long-term dialogue with our communities about the issues that are basically underlying the peaceful protests as well as the civil unrest? The mayor of Stockton raised that issue with the governor almost at the first 2 minutes of the call. And then Mayor Darrell Steinberg of Sacramento circled back to it about midway through the call and mentioned that he felt it was important that we do that. And he raised an issue that actually the mayor and I echoed that we would be supportive of, which was to look at a state level, for lack of a better term, inspector general or that kind of organization that would be able to take on independent investigations of officer involved shootings across the state, because without that, there may not be universal trust in the outcomes of what's happening at the local level. So I wanted to report on that, and thank you very much, Mayor.
You're welcome. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor. A couple of things. First was I was at the Walnut Creek Chamber virtual meeting last week. We updated everybody on the Walnut Creek allowances. The Assistant City Manager, Terry Kilgore, helped to provide most of the background on that and talking about what businesses could expect, and also in the formation of the ad hoc committee. And Councilmember Silva had brought this up on the Rebound Ad Hoc Committee. I know you'll be talking a little bit about this, but I'd like to see what the feeling is of the City Council if we were to write a letter to the county asking to put a timeline on restaurants being able to open. Right now, there is no timeline. San Francisco's released a timeline. In my personal view, I think that having different timelines for outdoor dining and indoor dining doesn't make a lot of sense to me if everybody is following the proper social and health protocols. But at this point, businesses aren't even able to plan. And my concern is that something happens like happened today, where the county comes out with an ordinance that suddenly there is easing, and it's good for it starts tomorrow. Restaurants have to prepare. They have to get their staff ready. They have to prepare for things internally. They have to get their food. And I think that this is being incredibly unfair to the wealth of businesses that we have downtown, and at least let them have some kind of date that they can prepare for. I think that if we have a letter coming from the city with your signature and the backing of the City Council, maybe this can get the county to move and give some kind of indication to these businesses that are not just struggling. And now I realize the irony of this discussion in light of everything that's happened in the last few days. But these businesses are really hurting, and we need to give them something to look to. And I'm not sure the protocol for this, and I'll ask the city manager, but I'd like to see if we can get a letter sent by the city to the county urging them to give a timeline for this.
I think the mayor needs to report on what we're doing at the ad hoc level.
Well, that's fine, but
Yes,
yeah,
right.
but
And
my
I think
request stands.
okay, I'm going to, ironically, it's the same committee. I'm going to say that that feels like it's something that has to do with the legislature committee, and the legislature committee can in fact take this on. And if either city manager or city attorney wish to opine on that fact, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, I think you have a couple options. As long as this complies with our general legislative platform, the legislative committee through the mayor could issue such a letter. The other option, if there was general concurrence this evening to give direction to staff to craft such a letter and send it, we could do that as well. Either option is fine.
Okay. In that case, I would like to see nods of heads. A long time ago, we agreed that we would actually say yes, but let's do nods of heads. All of those that wish that the legislative committee hurry and get done a letter to the county health organization to be realistic about how people have to plan their lives. And I would ask that it not just be restaurants, but I am willing to use restaurants as the primary example, so that we all can make ourselves ready to pop into service. I suspect, just guessing, that they figure that they can open it tomorrow, and they're counting on the lag time for the restaurants to get it through, so that it doesn't all happen at once, and everybody will take some time. And therefore, even though they're giving the green light to get ready and open when it falls in place, but we will take it on. Heads, do I see yeses nodding? I do. Okay, we're going to do that. Thank you for that. Is there anything further you would like to add to the meeting?
No, that concludes my report.
Okay, so I am going to proudly say that I sacrificed my nose on Monday morning to be a COVID-19 statistic. I got, and I encourage everybody to do that. It's not really that bad, and it's over really quickly. The system's a little foreign, but you can make a reservation either by telephone and or by web. And I encourage you to do it, because that will help us all figure out how to be better, how the county and medicine can figure out how the virus really works. I attended the Golden Rain board meeting, and they're having much the same problems as we are in terms of financing, in terms of getting people to adapt to the new rules. There was a lot of time discussing whether walkers could have some rights to the golf course, because when it was a full shelter in place and the golf course was closed, they were given free rein, and now they're having to give it up, and they're not real happy about it. Lots of comments about if we're not using the services, then why should we pay for them? And it was fascinating to see how much people are the same, whether you're young or old or in between. Thank you all for what you did on pretty short notice for putting together the virtual Memorial Day event. It was moving, and largely because each of you had something very personal to share with the community. And I really got to know each of you a little bit better, and that effort is valuable. We had a study session, and at that study session, we looked at the COVID-19 issues and re-emerging. And in that meeting, we did appoint the ad hoc committee, which has met 2 times to determine some structure and to come out with some plans of operation. The committee has decided to focus first on downtown in June, downtown retail and restaurant, and the use of the beat streets and managing parking and figuring out alcohol permits and activities in the area such as music and art. The next part of our program is to go to what has been called fondly the Outer Banks of Walnut Creek, where we are going to look at how to encourage creative openings in things like shopping centers and strip malls. In July, we're planning on looking at the concerns of the automotive industry, the hospitality industry, and then the office buildings, especially those smaller office buildings and the old office buildings that are maybe less able to make and meet the requirements required to open for the health and safety of their workers. Among the things that we did is we have identified one particular subject matter, and we searched out and found some subject matter experts who will help us, and the Mayor Pro Tem is one of them, who will help us identify finding and installing some temporary art to encourage foot traffic in downtown. Other things have been done. We have a downtown business survey with the results to be fully fleshed out. We met in the field to look, city staff met in the field to look at possible pilot programs for restaurants and what their possibilities are in terms of street usage and spare things. We encourage the staff to work on checklists for easy approval of temporary signage, use of private property, and outdoor dining being creative. And we continue to look to work with the stakeholders to find and be respectful of their concerns. Finally, after that meeting at the study session, I met for the final meeting of the Youth Commission, and once again was really amazed at how dedicated these young people are and how much we can have faith in the future, because they are smart, they are concerned, they're active, and we are so lucky to have them in our community. That being finished, I believe we have come to the moment of public comments. This portion of the meeting is reserved for comment on items not on the agenda. Under the Brown Act, the council cannot act on items raised during public communications, but may respond briefly to statements made or questions posed request clarification, or refer the item to staff. Does any member of the public wish to make their comments? Their comments are limited to 2 minutes. They are, again, requests that they be delivered courteously, remembering that this is a public meeting, and we have a pretty high standard of the audience that's listening, and so we keep it appropriate. I think we're there. 2 minutes. Oh, for those people on phones, it's *9 if you wish to get in the queue. And I believe there are some people who are anxious to talk. So City Clerk, will you bring them forward?
Geraldine, first speaker.
Hello.
Hi, Geraldine. Would you please?
Hi.
Yes.
Hi, my name is Geraldine Slevin. I'm a resident of Oakland, but I'm joining this meeting because I believe the whole Bay Area is seeing that our public safety is insufficient for responding to the needs of the community. I'm specifically calling in on behalf of, or in honor of the family of Miles Hall, to ask for 1, non-police, non-violent response crisis teams for mental health crisis calls, 2, restricting the use of force policy, 3, mandatory anti-bias de-escalation and crisis intervention training for all law enforcement officers, and 4, accountability, including independent and unbiased investigations for officer-involved shootings.
Thank you. You still have some time. Is there more you'd like to say?
I would just say in this moment, it's really clear that Black Americans, including young people and including people with mental health, who are experiencing mental health crises, do not receive the same treatment by their city governments and by police as other folks. And it's really important that we take action now to make sure that young people like Miles can walk and live their lives in safety.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Our next speaker is Mark Jaffe.
Mark, unmute, please.
Good evening. Can you hear me now?
I can.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for the time. And first, many thanks to the city and the police force for protecting my safety and the safety of my neighbors in downtown Walnut Creek on Sunday night and last night. I hope you can continue to keep up the good job. Today, the county issued a new shelter-in-place order, and Appendix C2 of that shelter-in-place order allows small social gatherings of up to 12 people. I hope the city would consider taking advantage of that to allow picnicking in the median of Locust Street and Main Street on Friday and Saturday night as a way of rejuvenating restaurants in the area. I believe a careful reading of this you would find that it's not violating the health order. It's not quote unquote outdoor dining because it's remote from the restaurant facility itself. And we would be able to maintain the appropriate social distance. So I hope you might consider that what I would like to call an eat-in in downtown Walnut Creek sooner rather than later. And thanks for listening.
You're welcome. Thank you for your comments. Will we bring forth the next person, please?
Next speaker is Brenda.
Brenda, you're in. Thank you.
Sorry, it just kicked me out, I think, and I got back in.
Okay.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council members. My name is Brenda Barnhart. I was born and raised in Walnut Creek, and I was sweeping up glass yesterday with Council Member Francois downtown Walnut Creek. Probably, I was wearing a mask though, but it was nice doing that work with him and his wife, among other wonderful women from the Women's March movement. I'm coming to you tonight on the 1-year anniversary of Miles Hall's killing by Walnut Creek police, and in the middle of 2 pandemics. 1, the health pandemic, and 2, the pandemic of racism and violence against African Americans in this country. It is even clearer today that there needs to be more training in Walnut Creek as well as the entire country in anti-bias, diversity, and de-escalation. And I really encourage there to be a non-police, non-violence crisis response to mental health calls so that what happened with Miles Hall never happens again in our city. I also call for a restrictive use of force policy for the Walnut Creek Police Department, and was very sad to see that the peaceful protest yesterday ended in the use of force against teenagers. And I hope that we can all work together as Walnut Creek citizens and Bay Area citizens to help bring the police and our people together and build some trust where I think it's sorely needed. Thank you.
Thank you, Brenda. Next person in line.
Joshua Ferrer.
Hello, Joshua.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, my name is Joshua Farrar, and I'm a resident of Walnut Creek. As a participant in yesterday's powerful demonstration, I unfortunately have to express disappointment at the actions of police officers. Peaceful protests were met with tear gassing of kids. There was a video of a 14-year-old tear gas in their eyes, indiscriminate use of rubber bullets, death threats, and arrests, and much of this is on video. I think there was also confusion around the curfew that was set. It was initially at 8 p.m. And then was moved suddenly to 6 p.m. Without clear communication. And I think this could have amounted to a criminalization of the peaceful protests. And I also have to say that some of the Walnut Creek Police Department's messages to the public about the protest were downright inaccurate in instances, painting an adversarial picture of what was overwhelmingly a peaceful protest movement. Of course, these protests come in the wake of the murder of George Floyd and the nationwide movement for racial justice and police reform. And of course, recognizing this as the 1-year anniversary of the death of Miles Hall at the hands of the Walnut Creek Police Department. I think it's important also to highlight important actions that must be taken at this time right here in Walnut Creek. Number 1, instituting basic protections against police violence, adopting a restrictive use of force policy. I think the need for this was highlighted by some of the police actions yesterday. This includes requiring officers to de-escalate whenever possible, banning the use of all types of neck holds. Right now, the carotid neck hold is allowed in Walnut Creek, which is an inherently dangerous technique. Has been banned and severely restricted in many of the largest police departments in the country. I think we should require officers to intervene and stop excessive force used by other officers. And I'll just end briefly. I think strengthening training and ensuring accountability are also important to do. Yes.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
We have Lindsay Hughes coming in.
Hi, Lindsay.
Hi, sorry. Thank you very much for this opportunity to speak. I really appreciate the work and the efforts of the council and the mayor. This is a difficult time. I think the last speaker addressed pretty much most of my concerns. I apologize if I have missed, and I'm having a difficult time finding a recap as to whose decision it was to tear gas and use force on the peaceful protesters yesterday. So I would love to have a reference to that. I've missed the accountability level from the police force and can't find it. So that's number one. Number two, and I'll try to be quick. I know you have a lot of things going on. I'm wondering, I was listening with respectful attention to the conversation in terms of budgets. And obviously this is an extremely difficult time. I will let you know I'm still paying my taxes, yay. But I'm wondering, since this is probably going to happen in the next 2 years on the federal level, what the savings would be from the budget to eliminate tear gas, rubber bullets, riot gear, canine units from the police department. And again, thank you. And if you could show me where I can find more information on the accountability aspect of what happened to the protesters yesterday, I would really appreciate it. I live in Walnut Creek. I love it. I'm frustrated, and I wish you well. Thank you.
Thank you, Lindsay. Next speaker, please.
Laura Redmond.
Hi, my name is Laura Redmond. I am in Dan's district. I am calling because the lives of people matter more than property. Miles Hall should not have died. His murder is on the hands of everyone on the police force and all of you within the city council, particularly until something is done to ensure that this never happens to anyone again. Earlier, you were discussing how if 5 police officers retired, you would want to backfill those positions as soon as possible. You were also talking about this in light of the robberies that have happened. The fact that you're having such urgency around this instead of around the death of a young Black person is really alarming to me. I would urge you to instead recognize the need for a mental health crisis response within our city. We need a non-police, non-violent response crisis team for mental health crisis. These protests have been escalated by the presence of the police, and we also see that this happens with mental health crisis. In this moment of time particularly, I urge each of you to commit to meeting the requests of Miles Hall's family and to reflect on how you otherwise are perpetuating white supremacy and the devaluing of our Black and brown residents. You know, none of the work that you talked about earlier, the Memorial Day celebration was lovely, but that is not nearly as important as this. And this is something that you all can really do to make change right now. If someone else were to pass away, to be murdered in the same way, that also will fall on you. So again, I urge you to take action immediately and to have the same urgency around this as you are around picnicking in restaurants. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. Next person, please.
Ted Angus.
Hi, Ted. Please unmute.
Thank you. I apologize for that.
That's okay.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mayor Haskew and Council. I appreciate very much the opportunity to speak to you. It's been about a year since I've spoken to you, and today is the anniversary of Miles Hall's death. I want to recognize a couple things. First, Mayor Haskew, I want to thank you for the opportunity to place the mental health ribbons in Civic Park as a recognition of the struggle that families have with mental health. I also want to recognize Councilman Wilk for being at the demonstration yesterday. I'm not sure who else was there, but I appreciate that he was there. I just recently, I believe on this call, heard Councilwoman Silva talk about some opportunities to consider non-police response and other opportunities at a more state or countywide level. I appreciate the fact that there's a change in tone from the council. I've also heard that change in tone from Chief Chaplain, and we've had the privilege of working closely with the city manager, Mr. Buckshire, as well, and some of these issues that the Friends of Scott and Town Hall have been working on for a year now. I will say that it's been a year and not enough has been done, but I do appreciate the change in tone, and I hope that we can work on that. There's been a lot of talk in the last couple of weeks about how do we find common ground and awareness to make everyone in our community feel more welcome. We have spoken with the administration in Walnut Creek about having a listening meeting and having an opportunity for people within the city to talk to each other and learn more from each other. And I think there's no better time now than to make that a priority. I would echo the comments of all the other people who've already mentioned the priorities of the Friends of Scott and Town Hall. And I hope that we can find a way to make progress on those items. Thank you.
You're welcome. Please.
We have Kat coming in next.
Actually, it's Gwen's in right now.
Oh.
Hi. Hi. I got myself unmuted. I'm Gwen Gilson. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist, your neighbor in Concord. I addressed you about a year ago regarding the death of Miles Hall. At that time, I urged you to do your personal work around your white privilege. Still looking at an all-white city council here. I don't know what you have done. I think you see how it is caught up with the city. There is a widespread perception that has led to the targeting of the downtown stores. If you spend any time at all online, you know where that emanated from, the perception that white privilege is taking advantage of Black and brown communities. And we see how that's playing out nationwide and the rage that's erupting over the killing of George Floyd. So I continue to urge you to do your personal work and be public about it and make a statement about it. It was reassuring to see the police chief's statement. There needs to be more. I support the requests of the Hall family for increased non-police, nonviolent crisis response. I just came from watching a lovely tribute to Miles prior to this and saw that Suzanne Tavano, Director of Behavioral Health for the county, said that she's talking to local government officials about this. So I hope you're participating in that. And you do need a restrictive use of force policy. There's no need for the violent response that Miles received. He was a lovely young person, not violent. And it's an utter tragedy that he was killed and utter tragedy that no steps have been taken since to hold people accountable. And then, of course, there's the anti-bias, diversity, and de-escalation training for you and for law enforcement. So thank you for this time to talk. And I hope that you recognize that the times are catching up with you and they're not going away.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next speaker, please.
Kat Alessi.
Yeah, please. Unmute. If you're on a phone, that's *9. If you're on Zoom, thank you.
Does that help? Are you listening? Okay. My name is Kat Alesi. I am Miles's Hall aunt. And it's been a really hard past couple of weeks watching the responses to the other police shootings. And while I do not encourage looting in any way, at times it was pretty hard to watch George Floyd get so much attention and have his police officers fired immediately. And a year later, the police officers haven't even really been suspended, let alone having an independent investigation. So it's really frustrating that within a week that they have moved decisively in taking action where it's been a year. It's been 52 weeks and 2 days, and there is no action. And it has been so frustrating to feel like the implicit bias is still active and alive. And it's active and alive as part of the systemic racism that this country has been founded on. Across this country, people have been begging for our white politicians, for our politicians in general, to help dismantle this system of white supremacy. And each and every one of you are in a place of responsibility that has the opportunity to stop perpetuating this violence by the police upon Black and brown bodies. Thank you.
Thank you, Kat. Next speaker, please.
Andrea?
Andrea Gaskell.
Andrea, thanks.
Hi there. Good evening, council members. I know you're all dealing with a lot right now. There's piles and piles of a whole bunch of stuff happening. But my name is Andrea Gaskill. I'm a Walnut Creek resident. I actually live on a hill right next to Broadway Plaza, and I watched and heard everything that was happening on Sunday. I also listened in on yesterday's emergency meeting and listened to lots of people voice their concerns about broken windows and stolen goods and what you as the council, what your action should or shouldn't be. And I think action was taken quickly and decisively. I saw, well, I mean, I mostly heard a major police force making themselves known. I could see armored Humvees, I think they were, from my backyard. It was really nuts to see that happen in my backyard. And yeah, but it's already been said that today is the 1-year anniversary of the death of Miles Hall. And as far as I can see, I don't see that same level of action taken. We can all agree that his death was a tragedy. But as a resident of Walnut Creek, I would hope to see more urgency for the changes that the FOSAF group is requesting. You worked very quickly for broken windows and stolen goods for the people who have businesses in the downtown area. And I ask, please, that you also work quickly for saving future lives so that something that like that happened to Miles doesn't happen again. And you know, I'm sure you know their list of things, but I'll repeat it again. Non-police, non-violent crisis response option for mental health crises, a restrictive use of force policy for Walnut Creek, and cities with this policy in place actually save lives, reduce officer injuries, and save money too. And third, the anti-bias training. But thank you very much.
Yes.
Claire Newman.
Thank you.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, my name is Claire Newman. I was born and raised in Oakland, and I want to invite everybody on this council to really listen right now, because I think it's easy to go back to the status quo. I think it's easy to listen to everything that everybody is saying here and just go, well, it'll be okay. It'll be okay. Just like Dan and Justin mentioned earlier, you said when things go back to normal. And the thing is that the normal is not okay, and the normal is not good enough. We need to change something. Black people have been traumatized for 400 years in this country. We need to overhaul the police system, and something needs to be done. People need to take action. People in political positions, you need to listen right now. It's not light. It's not no big deal. People's lives, Black people keep dying and dying and dying and dying and dying. And white people have been silent. I'm guilty of it. I've been silent. And every single person on this panel, you have the power to do something. You can't just not do anything. The reason why people are angry, the reason why people are rioting, the reason why people are getting violent is because nothing's changed. What else are they supposed to do? People's voices have not been heard. Something needs to change. We need to protect Black people. The police need to be trained differently. We need to get social workers into the police force. We need to get people to talk to others about unconscious bias, about racism that is deeply embedded in every single person in this country because people have been conditioned. And I just implore you to please do something. You have the power, and everybody here is here because we care and because we need you. We need you. You are our voice. You are our representatives. You could be the. Thank you. Thank you for letting me speak.
Next speaker, please.
Kathleen Allen.
Kathleen, you're on mute.
Hello. Hi, my name is Kathleen Allen. I am a lifelong resident of Walnut Creek. Like so many people here tonight, I am calling because a year ago today, a young man who was having a mental health crisis was brutally shot just streets away from his parents' home. A year ago tonight, my best friend in the world called me sobbing because her next door neighbor, who she had known for 20 years, had been shot and killed, and when his family called for help. And I think I appreciate you all listening, and I appreciate that Walnut Creek has made May the Mental Health Awareness Month, and I think that is wonderful, and I'm glad, but that's not enough. And I can see our city council now looking at other screens and looking at other things, because I know you've heard this before, but you aren't doing enough. And the cries of the people who knew Miles and loved him should be enough for you. Miles's life should be enough. He was worth more than what he is getting. And so, of course, I echo the sentiments of everyone else of wanting you to look at the FOSAF plans and what they have come up with. But the police officers who are responsible for his death are still on our streets. They are still, quote unquote, protecting and serving us, but they did not protect Miles. So I implore you to take actual, real action. Listen to the Friends of Scott and Alexis and Tawn Hall. What we are doing is not enough. We are an incredibly privileged city, an incredibly white city who I think gives a lot of lip service to progressive values, but then doesn't actually act on them to create systemic change. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak, and I hope that something someone said here tonight will make an impact.
I'm going to ask, just as a general question, because I know there was a celebration of Miles' life before this. We moved a moment of silence to the front at the request of his family. We moved the request of a moment of silence to honor the grief of the family and to honor the work that they're doing to try to bring mental health issues to the forefront. I'm getting the feeling from what people are talking about that they weren't aware of this, that they were in the process of transitioning from one meeting to another. Is that a fair comment? And maybe the first speaker can answer that if that's the topic they're bringing forward. If not, next speaker, please.
It's going to be Hannah.
Hannah, please unmute.
Hi there. My name is Hannah Edgar. I was born in Walnut Creek at John Muir Hospital. To your question, Mayor Haskew, yes, we were all attending that moving memorial for Miles before coming here. But I have to say, the fact that you have instituted a moment of silence at the beginning of this meeting does not change our demands. It does not change the fact that I'm not going to see Miles at my 10-year reunion. It does not change the fact that yesterday, tear gas at peaceful protesters. This is why we're here, because the family of Miles Hall has been begging you for a year to do something, to reform that department.
We're losing you, Hannah. Are you doing something to cover your phone?
No, I'm not. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. What I was going to say, Mayor Haskew, is that we're here asking you to do not what is easy, a moment of silence at the beginning of the meeting, an obligatory knee down for Walnut Creek police officers before firing tear gas at protesters. We're asking you to do what is hard. We're asking you to fire officers. We're asking you to get the officers who killed Miles off the street. We are asking you to reform your department, to work with social workers and psychologists and have first responders that are not the police. I echo everything that everyone else has said here. And you know, I want to say that I'm proud to be from Walnut Creek, but I'm not. I would love to be proud to be from Walnut Creek. And I hope that someday I can be proud to be from this city. Thank you.
Welcome. Next speaker, please.
Ton Hall.
Hello, City Council members. I wanted to, obviously today is a year that Miles was taken from us, and it's been a very emotional day, as you can imagine. I have a lot of different emotions right now. One is that my son isn't here, and he never will be here with me.
There's been a glitch. I'm going to ask the city council, the city clerk, to restart the time for Tom, please. Tom, are you?
At a time when we were in a mental health crisis. He was in a mental health crisis.
Excuse me for interrupting. You were cut off, and after you started your speech, we have reinstituted your time. Would you please, if you could, start from the beginning?
Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to say we're, obviously it's been a year since Miles was taken from us. We miss him every day. And now we fight, right? We come to the city council meetings. I did want to acknowledge the ribbon campaign and the fact that you guys put them up. I feel like we are going to be turning a new leaf, and I'm looking forward to working with you guys in the future. And I did want to say thank you for making the moment of silence as well. And I think Scott has something he wanted to say.
Thank you. I wrote a speech tonight that I was going to share, but I have now decided not to, because it was my raw feeling to stay for another time. But with that said, I mean, today's been an emotional day, and I think you're hearing from the community what they expect and what is in line with what we expect. So hopefully, the voices of the people will cause additional change to happen. And a year ago, how beautiful would it have been if we were all in line together, and we could have stood there on the streets in front of the protesters together with the city, showing Walnut Creek is better. Walnut Creek made change, and who knows what would happen. Maybe some of the broken windows that everyone's in up arms about wouldn't have happened. So, it's a year later. The wheels are turning, but I wish it would have turned sooner. And who knows what change we could have made over the last few days. So, thank you, guys.
Thank you, Scott. Is Alexis there?
Yeah.
Alexis,
Yeah.
Hi, thank you. Nice to see you, and thank you for coming to the meeting. We appreciate it.
Of course, we're always here. Keep coming.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Tom.
Yeah.
All right, next speaker, please.
David Ramirez.
Hi, thank you everybody for having me. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
I'm a Walnut Creek resident, and I've been a community volunteer within the community for many years. And I wanted to thank you for the opportunity to speak before you today. I really want to echo the sentiments. I think there's a real opportunity here for change, and I want to encourage the City Council to really look at some of the stuff that's coming out, particularly the new era of public safety, an advocacy toolkit for fair, safe, and effective community policing that's been put out by the Leadership Conference on Civil and Human Rights. I think there's some very good things in there that we can take from, learn from, and apply as a community. And to, it's tough to be on the backside of Mr. and Mrs. Hall, but I do think and agree with Scott that you have an opportunity now, maybe not a year ago, but now, to be an opportunity to be a beacon of change. And I really believe, and I know some of the council members and engage with some of them, I think it's a group that can do it. And I think that this is definitely an opportunity for your group to do something different, do something, separate from what's going on in our country today, and really be a driver for things that are positive in this country and in this town of Walnut Creek. Thank you again for the time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, David. Next speaker, please.
We have Carly coming in next.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
My name is Carly Magnus, and I am a resident of Lafayette. And I am a mom of 2 children, and when I look at Miles' face, I see my kids' faces. I just wanted to make the comment that while we don't live in Walnut Creek, we shop in Walnut Creek, we dine in Walnut Creek, we go to parks in Walnut Creek, and we want it to be safe, not just for our kids, but for all kids. And we don't feel like it is right now. And aside from my concerns about the policing, I feel like I'm also concerned with the fact that it feels very patriarchal. It feels very structured and top down. And, you follow this format and this is the way it has to be. And I just really wish you guys would get creative and come up with a solution that's out of the box, that can affect change fast, that is a more direct partnership, and that we really disrupt this system as a team and make all of Contra Costa better for all of our families. Thank you.
You're cute.
We have Tess Olson.
Hi, I am also a resident from Lafayette, but I do spend a lot of time in Walnut Creek. And I was also at the peaceful protests yesterday. And I'm calling in to say that I was very disturbed by the police response in Walnut Creek on June 1st during these protests in support of justice for George Floyd and justice for Miles Hall and justice for Black lives. And I wanted to say that the protest was nonviolent and peaceful. Yet police officers around 5:40 on June 1st, which was before curfew, threw tear gas at protesters that were peacefully congregating on the North Main Street on-ramp to I-680. And I was there along with my 17-year-old younger sister and other minors, and a 14-year-old who got tear gas in his eyes. And it was totally peaceful before this moment, and walking towards or on a freeway, I don't believe is a violent act that should be responded by the police with tear gas and later with rubber bullets. And there are Walnut Creek police officers violently reacting to peaceful Walnut Creek protesters. And, we're your citizens, and a lot of us feel unheard and unsupported by Walnut Creek legislation and government. And I wanted to express the need for anti-racist legislation to be the focus of some of your next meetings. And this should include policing, prisons, and education. And Black Lives Matter and our city's laws, I think, need to reflect that. So I urge you to continue to discuss this. Thank you for the time.
You're welcome. Next speaker, please.
OG is coming in next.
Hi, OG.
Hi, can you hear me? Great. As I've indicated previously, I'm a longtime resident of Walnut Creek, and I'm here tonight in support of the Friends of Scott, Alexis, and Tawn Hall. As others have noted, today marks the 1-year anniversary of the tragic death of Miles Hall. It's a time for reflection and assessment, where we've been, what goals we've set, how well we've met them or not, and how best to move forward. Miles's family is leading us with extraordinary wisdom, compassion, courage, determination, and eloquence as we seek, in partnership with you all, to strengthen our community by implementing necessary changes that have been mentioned this evening: non-police, non-violent crisis response to mental health calls, a restrictive use of force policy for Walnut Creek PD, and enhanced anti-bias, diversity, and de-escalation training for Walnut Creek PD. We repeatedly have asked the council to agendize these topics. That hasn't happened. We don't know why something as progressive and mutually beneficial as these demands haven't risen to the level of a priority so they can be discussed and decided on by the council. My concern is that our requests are being tolerated, not deeply heard, much less valued or acted upon. Madam Mayor and City Council members, please tell us, what will it take for you to agendize our requests and make life-saving measures a priority? I'll close with the well-known words of the rabbinic scholar Hillel. I invite all of us to consider the Hall family as we hear Hillel's challenge. If I am not for myself, who will be for me? If I am only for myself, what am I? If not now, when? His name is Miles Hall. He will not have died in vain.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Laura Redmond.
I believe she's already spoken.
Yes, you're right. Let's see, Jenny Schneider.
Hi, Jenny.
Are you able to hear me?
Yes, now.
Okay, thank you. I just have real quick comments. Again, my name is Jenny Schneider. I'm a resident and business owner in Walnut Creek. I wanted to say thank you for Mayor and the council members who requested ribbons for mental health awareness and Miles Hall, and for the ones who put them up. We appreciate that. We also appreciate that those ribbons, Mayor, that you allowed them to be at Civic Park. They were beautiful, so thank you. I also just wanted to bring to your attention, the Walnut Creek Police Department made a post just over 4 hours ago in regards to sharing their condolences about Miles and his family. And I know that was, I don't know. I'm going to say that I'm sure that was well intended, but I would recommend that if something is posted, that the posts are monitored, the comments, because some of them are very inappropriate. And just something to keep in mind when making these public posts. But I do appreciate the protection and that you gave to our community and allowing those peaceful protests to take part. It was a beautiful thing to witness in Civic Park. So thank you.
Next speaker, please.
We have M. Smetek.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Matthew Smetak, resident of Walnut Creek now for the last 5 years. I just want to express condolences again to the Hall family, because it's been 1 year today, and that is something that none of us should ever endure, a loss of a child. everyone on the council should take a moment and think, what if that was their kid? So what I do want to say in closing, I'll keep it nice and brief, is that the council should really looking into a diversity and inclusion commission, something that the city can leverage across the board to ensure that equality is in every corner of our city. It is a beautiful city, and I believe that we can even be stronger and better together. But the voices have to be heard in a format that can bubble up, be very clear and transparent, and enact real change in the city. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Vivian?
Hi, Vivian.
Oops. Hi, you guys. Can you hear me? Okay. So, first of all, Mayor Haskew, we do want to thank you for the gesture of the 24 minutes seconds of silence in honor of Miles Hall. As of course, and everybody's heard, this is the anniversary of his death. We also, at FOSAF, I'm sorry, let me just back up, Vivian McHenry from FOSAF, Friends of Scott, Alexis, and Ton Hall. We also want to acknowledge your proclamation on the 19th of May, declaring the month of May Mental Health Awareness Month, National Mental Health Awareness Month. That meant a lot. That proclamation, and specifically the wording, the very inclusive language that was in that wording that speaks of equity, and I don't think it said justice, but it definitely spoke of equity and culturally appropriate responses. That was very careful language, and we were encouraged that you that you kept it in there. It echoed what the county has done, and I don't think any city wants to lag behind what their county is doing. So you stepped up and you showed leadership, and we appreciate that. I'm sure what you have heard tonight, though, is frustration, because while those are great gestures and it is super important, I always say, I think I've said recently so much I'm going blue here, but Ziegler said you can't address a problem until you recognize it. So thank goodness through your proclamation you recognized it, and you declared what your values, what the city's values are. But now it's time, and we do appreciate that. So, and it is now time for some concrete results in the area of policy changes, training changes. I won't get into that because everybody has said it so eloquently tonight. I mean, oh my gosh, the community support is amazing. Program changes, a non-police, non-violent response. I personally don't think any of us understands why it's taken so long to roll something like that out. If another Miles Hall got sick today and had an episode today, right now, while we're having this meeting, and was behaving erratically, maybe even aggressively, and dropping a couple of F-bombs, your police officers would roll out there and do more than what they did to those teenagers yesterday with rubber bullets and tear gas on teenagers. The reason that we're all here together is because we love the Halls, but we love our children too, and we want something better for them in this world. And this over-policing and this militarized policing is unacceptable. It's unacceptable. And what it's producing is unequal and inequitable treatment for people of color, for the mentally ill, and now for teenagers. We've got to have police reform. We've got to do better. And it's more than a proclamation. And I know you're ready and you're up for that challenge. And Kevin, so are you. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you. Is there another speaker?
Yes, we have a phone number dialing in. So I don't have a name.
Okay, they'll say it when they come through.
Hi, my name is Jenna. I am Laura's partner. I'm calling in. Can you hear me?
Yes. Your name again? I only heard one.
Jenna Redmond, Laura's partner.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it. And you live in?
I live in Walnut Creek in Dan's district. So my partner called earlier, and we just both wanted to address your question about the minute of silence. And honestly, Mayor, that made me feel that you were not listening to us at all. I was there for the minute of silence. Thank you for doing that. And that is nowhere near enough. And that's not what folks were asking you for when you interrupted them and said, oh, I feel like no one has heard this. So I want to ask a question back to you, and I wanted to ask you to repeat back what are the demands that you heard during this public comment time to show that you were actually listening.
Okay, I'm going to explain that we do not have to respond to questions asked or things. It doesn't mean that I don't get the point of your question, but that is not how it works. So thank you for calling. Do you have anything more to say?
Yes, I know that you don't have to, but you actually have the option to. I've been to city council meetings before, so you can respond and you're choosing not to. And I just want to name that for everyone else listening.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
So Mayor, it doesn't appear that we have any more live public comments, but we do have about 9 written public comments that I've received during this time. One email is from Mr. Rafferty, which is specific to a general public comment. You may recall that he provided comments related to an item on the consent calendar.
Yes, but the item on the consent calendar was more for appropriate for public comment, and it was deemed to be by me a public comment.
Okay, so then I have emailed the second letter to the council, and I will not read that one into the record, but you have received it.
Thank you.
If that's okay. Okay.
That's fine with me.
Okay.
And Mayor, if I may, just to the council, the second letter that did come in was specific to the public comment section, and so as the city clerk indicated, the record would be included in the record of the city's proceedings, and the council's had an opportunity to see the letter. I'm not sure if you've actually had a chance to read it yet. It was emailed to you, so you have it, but I do want to reflect that the letter would be part of the record for this proceeding this evening.
I should have said that. Yes, I knew that. And Mr. Rafferty, I appreciate that you are passionate. Okay, next letter. City Clerk, is there any more letters? There are more hands.
I will start reading the letters if that's okay.
Absolutely.
Okay. We have Rohan Batra. Mayor Haskew, I feel for those who have been affected by the recent events in Walnut Creek. I'm reaching out to you regarding the recently imposed citywide curfew. It is my opinion that the citywide curfew is too broad and sweeping to best serve the residents of Walnut Creek and the city at large. While I understand the need to maintain order in the downtown area of Walnut Creek, city government must recognize that not all areas of Walnut Creek are best served by the currently imposed curfew. Assuming residents of Walnut Creek have been in large abiding with the county health order, they have effectively been trapped at home for 2 months, working from home and dealing with the many stresses that it encompasses. The recent curfew was announced to commence at 8 p.m. and was later revised to 6 p.m. For individuals such as myself who are lucky to still have a job, working from home all day, this allows no outdoor time. Frankly, I am shocked at how sweeping the order is. I strongly urge you to make the following revisions to the order. Change the curfew to encompass the downtown business district only, or change the start time to 10 p.m. for outlining suburban communities such as Northgate, and allow for individuals to drive to and from locations in and out of the city lines so long as they are not idled or loitering. Otherwise, it is technically a misdemeanor to return to home from an essential job after 6 p.m. or to travel in and out of Walnut Creek to exercise in an area outside of Walnut Creek. Please consider making these changes as soon as possible. I look forward to hearing from you or seeing changes similar to the ones I've outlined above implemented in Walnut Creek. It is the council's duty to respect the rights of residents to exercise and move across city lines freely for permitted work or other activities. If such changes cannot be made, I would urge the council to better communicate this order and its intent with the residents of Walnut Creek.
Thank you. Next
The
speaker.
next comment is from Emily Carroll. Mayor and council members, on the 1-year anniversary of the murder of Miles Halls at the hands of the Walnut Creek Police, please commit to providing past due justice, healing, and comfort to the Hall family. Do not let your guilt silence you and and prevent you from engaging in the meaningful and necessary work the Hall family and FOSAF is doing. White guilt is a deadly force, particularly the white guilt of people in positions of power. You are in a unique position to lead a change around policing in your community. You have the opportunity to revise use of force policies and provide greater mental health responses. Changing entrenched bureaucratic systems may be challenging, but you have the opportunity to meet your community and rise to the challenge. Please commit tonight to putting FOSAF's initiatives on the agenda. The Hall family and FOSAF lead the way, and we, the community, are here, waiting to do the work. Rest in power, Miles Hall. Thank you, Emily Carroll.
Thank you.
The next is from Isabella Millay. I was a member of the Walnut Creek Youth Commission for 2 years, and in our first year, Chief of Police Thomas Chaplin spoke to us. A commission member asked him what Walnut Creek Police Department was doing to address police brutality, and he sat back in his chair and said, "What on earth makes you think there is police brutality in Walnut Creek?" The following year, Miles Hall was killed by the Walnut Creek Police Department. Yesterday, Walnut Creek Police Department used excessive force in the form of tear gas, flash grenades, and rubber bullets against protesters, many of them children and the vast majority peaceful. Only a few days before, Thomas Chaplin had written in his public statement, "Policing is not meant to be the exercise of power over another. It does not give us license to abuse anyone, especially people of color. We are on the same side. People should not be in fear of us." But the actions of the police yesterday proved that these are empty words and that protesters, especially Black protesters, have a very real reason to fear and distrust the police in Walnut Creek. It is clear that Walnut Creek is at best desperately and inexcusably aware of the deep-rooted racism and systematic flaws in policing, and at worst, manipulating its citizens without any intent of working to address those issues. The Walnut Creek Police Department must apologize directly for their violent response to protesters and commit to policy that would truly protect the people's right to protest. We have seen that you can say the right things, but now it is time to back those words with action. The next email is from Ada Martin. Walnut Creek's PD actions are the recent peaceful protests are unacceptable. The police do not make me feel safe, and I can't imagine how unsafe they make Black and brown people in our community feel. I feel ashamed to be a part of a city that condones this kind of violence. I would like to see the city and its police department make an apology and take action to be actively anti-racist. The people destroying property for the sake of destroying property, especially non-Black folks doing so, are not an org of this movement. In a country where we value property and profit over human lives, destroying corporate property is an important way to make people listen. Ultimately, none of us, non-Black folks, can tell Black America how to protest and how to be angry. The next comment comes from Stephanie S. To the Walnut Creek City Council. Since the Walnut Creek Police Department killing of Miles Hall happened a year ago, you have made some progress, but more concrete training and policy are desperately needed, especially regarding how police respond to mental health crisis. Please make this a priority. I'd like you to add the following items to your agenda. 1, a non-police, non-violent crisis response option for mental health crises. 2, a restrictive use of force policy for Walnut Creek. Cities with this policy in place actually save lives, reduce officer injuries, and save money too. And 3, an anti-bias, diversity, and de-escalation training for all Walnut Creek law enforcement and leadership. Thank you for your attention. Stephanie Civic. The next comment comes from Catherine Jones. Hello, I am writing in support of Friends of Scott, Alexis, and Ton Hall today, the 1-year anniversary of Miles Hall's death. Our community will not forget Miles and his wonderful family. Please honor his memory with real change in Walnut Creek. Specifically, we want the following added to the formal city agenda. 1, non-police, non-violent response crisis team for mental health crisis calls. 2, restrictive use of force policy for Walnut Creek. Cities with this policy save lives, reduce officer injuries, and save money too. And 3, mandatory anti-bias, diversity, and de-escalation training for all law enforcement and leadership. Sincerely, Catherine Jones. Next, I have Fred Weedman. I'm Fred Weedman. I live in Walnut Creek, and I'm a pastor at Hillcrest Church United Church of Christ in Pleasant Hill. I was at the March 3rd City Council meeting for a different matter, and I heard Town Hall and others speaking regarding Miles Hall, and was very struck by what they had to say. I was also struck by the reactions or lack thereof from the City Council members. Following that portion of the meeting, the mayor called a brief recess, and when we reconvened, the council members each gave a brief report out of their recent events and experiences. One of you, I won't name names, was telling a story about visiting an elementary school, during which time you reported the kid's teacher said that the job of a city council member was to protect all of us, to which you told us, you smiled and said, "Yeah, I guess that's right. Our job is to protect everybody." And all the council members were smiling as you spoke. It was a cute moment. My jaw hit the floor and my heart stopped. Wow, if I were a political handler, I'd say that's not a good look. One moment, a panel of council members sits quiet with no apparent expression, while dear citizens of our city, black and white, and in between of various ages, even the mother of the young man himself, share with you what happened that day, how to stop it from happening again, pleading with you, no reaction. Following a brief recess, we reconvene and get a cute story about visiting an elementary school classroom and agreeing that the council's job is to protect everyone, and everyone smiles. I'm not a political handler. I'm a pastor and a neighbor of these dear people and a neighbor of yours. I'm thankful for all that you do to protect us. I pray for the soul of the city. I pray for this chamber. I plead with you in the name of decency and humanity, and in the name of what you tell the innocent kids of our city. Protect all of us, including Black and brown people. And that was 2 minutes, so I'll go ahead and forward that email to the City Council. The next email comes from Dara Goldfein. To whom it may concern, my name is Dara Goldfein, and I am writing in response to the use of force against peaceful protesters who blocked 680 on June 1st. Around 6 p.m. on Monday afternoon, a group of peaceful protesters, many minors, blocked 680 freeway. The Walnut Creek Police Department asked them to disperse, and when they did not, they fired flash grenades, tear gas, and rubber bullets on the protesters. Tear gas is illegal in international warfare and should never be used against peaceful minors protesting for a just future. Rubber bullets also hit cars driving the freeway unrelated to the protest, further endangering public safety. The Walnut Creek PD needs to be held accountable for this unacceptable use of force. They must issue a public apology and construct a plan for peaceful dispersion of protests to make sure this violence does not happen again. The next is from Sydney Carroll. I can't recall if she already spoke or I've read an email from her. No, I have not. Okay, Sydney Carroll. My name is Sydney Carroll, and I grew up in Walnut Creek. I share the sentiments of those who have shared today, the 1 year since the death of Miles Hall. Walnut Creek needs to do more and can do more. If you are anti-racist and support equality for Black and brown people, take action to show this. Please take the actions proposed by FOSA. 1, a non-police, non-violent crisis response option for mental health crises. 2, a restrictive use of force policy for Walnut Creek. Cities with this policy in place actually save lives, reduce officer injuries, and save money too. And 3, anti-bias, diversity, and de-escalation training for all Walnut Creek law enforcement and leadership. This is the very least you can do to respect the life Miles had taken from him. Black lives matter. Miles' life matters. Do better. Thank you, Sydney Carroll. And Mayor, that concludes the written public comments that I have received.
Okay, there seem to be some other people who have stuck up their little blue hands on the live.
Okay.
There's somebody who's called forward already, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, the phone number.
Let's see here.
You're open. There we go. Can you hear me?
Yes. David, have you been here before this evening?
No.
No? Okay. You wouldn't lie to me, would you?
No.
Okay.
Seeing as I'm not the Walnut Creek Police Department, no, I would not. So,
sorry.
Hello, my name is David Schiff. I grew up in Walnut Creek. I was born and raised there. I'm 24 years old and was a classmate of Miles Hall for many years in several classes. My time to be able to get to know him better was cut short. He died a year ago. Black Lives Matter, and we remember. The first thing I want to say is I would like to ask on behalf of Scott and Ton Hall, I would like to ask that you add these 3 things to the city agenda. First, non-police, non-violent crisis response to all mental health calls. Second, restrictive use of force policy for the Walnut Creek Police Department. Third, anti-bias, diversity, and de-escalation training for the Walnut Creek Police Department. The second and last thing I wanted to say is I wanted to dispel the bald-faced lie told by the Walnut Creek Police Department that their use of force was justified by protesters throwing rocks. I was at the protest myself. I was at the 680 North entrance blockage. I had the second tear gas canister land directly under me. I was there. I was almost mowed down by an armored Humvee. I was seconds away after having already been immobilized by tear gas from being run down by militarized Humvee. That is a fact. No one was throwing rocks, no one was damaging property, and in fact, the only damaged property in the area was a car that was hit by a stray rubber bullet from the SWAT team from the Walnut Creek Police Department. These are all just facts from someone who was personally there, and I wanted to say that the Walnut Creek Police Department has lied about their justification for use of force. That is all. I yield the rest of my time.
Thank you, David. There's next. Yeah.
We have Julie Neal.
Julie? Hi there. Oh, you're mute, unmute. Thank you. Now we can hear you, maybe.
Whew. Hi, I'm Julie Neal, and I'm the founder of Mother's Quest and the Mother's Quest podcast, and I'm a mom to 2 boys. Ton Hall is a member of my Mother's Quest community, and I'm really here showing up for her in solidarity. And I've been trying to figure out what words I can say that will matter. You've all been listening to so many powerful stories and words, and truthfully, I don't think there's anything specific I'm going to add to the content of what people have asked, what they are advocating for, what they are demanding of you. I think instead I want to remember that you are all human. And it can be easy to keep listening and to just kind of reach a point at which these things are not able to be absorbed anymore. I want to invite you to take a breath and actually let this all in. I did that a little over 3 years ago when, as I was scrolling through Facebook, a dear friend of mine, a Black woman, Genji Heiston, was crying after the loss of another Black man at the hands of a police officer. And she was saying, my friends, my white friends, if you see this, I want you to imagine for a moment what it feels like to literally fear for the safety of your Black husband, your Black brothers, your Black children every day when they walk out the door. And I had been, seeing things that made me feel terrible, and then kind of scrolling on by. But after I heard this from my friend Genji, I could no longer do that. And trying to figure out, especially as a white person, what we can do to make a difference is hard. It's uncomfortable. There's no easy answer. But what I learned then and what I continue to learn is I can do more. And even if all of you have been doing something, thank you. You can do more. The only way we're going to see change is if we all actually connect to our humanity, if we connect to the people like Genji, to the people like Tan, to the real stories that we hear, and realize that we are all a collective. An injury to one of our children is an injury to all of our children. One of the other things I've done is I have actually brought people onto my podcast and given them space to tell their story. Sarah Marcuria, the co-founder of Mothers Against Police Brutality, saw her father killed by police when they called police for help because he had mental illness. That is a conversation I would like to offer to you. I also have interviewed Sabrina Fulton, Trayvon Martin's mother, about what it has been like for her to try to heal and move into advocacy. And I know that Tan Hall has been interviewed by Laura Halpin, who's another member of my community. And I would ask you, please, to consider putting these stories into your ears, to do that in a way that opens your heart, and to ask yourself, what can you do that is more? I know there's something you can. Thank you.
Next speaker, please.
We have Joseph.
Hi, Joseph.
Hello. Thank you for hearing me. My name is Joseph Karen. I'm 29, born and raised in Walnut Creek. I grew up here. I went to St. Mary's. I went to WCI. I went to Las Lomas. That's kind of my background. I'm not sure if anyone's familiar with an app called Nextdoor, but it's basically social media for your neighborhood. A few days ago, before the protest, simply the flyer was posted on Nextdoor. That was it. There was no aggravating comments accompanying the flyer until people started posting. You would think that people would have been in support of a peaceful protest in Walnut Creek, but I'm not saying this is the entire sentiment of the town, but seeing Nextdoor, what was going on there was horrifying. People did not want it to happen. They thought it was going to be bad for Walnut Creek. They thought the town was going to get burnt down. They thought it was going to be just everything you can imagine. Everything that the news has been showing you, that's what people thought was going to happen. I attended the protest. It was peaceful. People of color were welcomed to share their experiences with police brutality. And there were, everyone on Nextdoor said, who is organizing this meeting? People commented, Soros, Antifa, you know, these far radical movements. Do you know who organized the protest? Were young members of the community. And yes, there were a lot of people from Oakland and Vallejo and Antioch at the protest, but there were so many people from Walnut Creek at the protest. And there were people of color who got up and shared their experiences. People of color who were born, raised, went to school in Walnut Creek, and their experience at going to school in Walnut Creek, being how they were treated by the police of Walnut Creek, it was horrifying. I can't believe it. So post-protest, what happened on Nextdoor, people mentioned the minors at the protest. People said that Child Protective Services should be called on their parents because of how, yeah.
This is a 2-minute speech and you've used up your 2 minutes. Can you wrap it up shortly?
Yes. People said that Child Protective Services should be called on the parents who allowed their minors to go to the protest. This is what's being taught to the children, and it's not right. I know not everyone in Walnut Creek is like that, but you would be surprised the amount of people that there are like that in Walnut Creek, and nothing is going to change until the mindset of the community has been addressed and acknowledged and changed.
Thank you. Come back again and talk to us again,
I will. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next speaker, please.
Daniel.
Is Daniel or repeat?
Hello? Can you hear me? Got a weak signal here.
Yes, hi, Daniel.
Hi. Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, Council. I know it's been a long night. I've appeared before you. My name is Daniel Barnhart from Walnut Creek, California. I'm an attorney in the office right across the street from.
Daniel, you're coming along. You're coming across as fuzzy. I cannot understand you clearly. Could you speak distinctly and into whatever microphone you have?
Is this better?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Again, my name is Daniel Romer. I'm from Walnut Creek, California. I have appeared before you body few times in the past year. I'm going to be a little bit blunt today in the interest of time because I think the occasion calls for it. First of all, I'd like to say to the police chief and to the individuals who supervise them that we have to get right, that you have to get right the difference between violent criminals and looters and teenagers exercising their First Amendment rights because they're outraged over an outrageous incident that's happened. So that has to be got right. We can't have tear gas and Humvees and other instruments used against our community who are exercising their First Amendment right. It's not appropriate. It's not legal. And we've got to get that right. Secondly, I want to say, I know there's concern in the community about violence. I personally abhor violence. It sickens me. It scares me. I've been scared over the last few days. I want to say about that, though, that, I felt myself having an internal discourse with some of them. And I thought, well, if, I'd like to have them join the FOSAC group. I'd like to have them join some of these committees and move violently for change. And I'd like to convince them that is what they should be doing. And I thought, well, what should I say to them? Should I say to them, you should email your councilman and you should join a committee and you should attend every council meeting every other Tuesday and you should, calm voice, you should try to convince people. I wonder if there are some talking points that you would give them. And
Daniel,
I'm
sorry to interrupt you, but your 2 minutes are up. And since you've come to us before, I know you'll come back to us to finish this in the near future.
I will just say in closing, if you allow me, to people like me, to the white people in the communities, if you're not asking and demanding change at this time, you're part of the problem. And to people in power who have the ability to change, who have the mechanisms to change, if you're not making those changes, you are the problem too. We need to get this done and we need to do it now. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Phone number 925.
Okay. Person on the phone? Hello? *9 if you're on the phone, you need to talk.
This is for 383-6107.
Hello? Yes, hurry. Please start now. I think they hung up.
Lost them.
All right. We covered all our bases with public comment.
We received one additional written comment. I don't know if you want me to read that in. We're going to be going back and forth.
Yes, go ahead, please.
Okay. This email is from Leslie Shafton. Hello, my name is Leslie Shafton. I'm a resident of Walnut Creek. I'm also a local business owner and the co-president of Women's March Contra Costa. I'm writing to the City Council to encourage you to engage in compassionate and innovative leadership and to listen and respond to caring community members. Within the Jewish religion, we believe that when given to save a life, we save the world. Likewise, to take a life, we destroy the world. What if you implemented policies that save future lives? Policies that would make Walnut Creek a leader in how to lead with heart, humanity, dignity, and justice. Policies that take into account internal biases that we all hold. Policies that keep all community members safe from the violence and prejudice. Please consider creating a diversity and bias task force to ensure that all voices are heard, protected, and valued. Please do this in the name of Miles Hall.
Thank you. I now close public comment. At this time, I look to the city manager or council members to make comments if they wish to. Would you please indicate, and the city attorney, if you wish to make any comments, please let me know. City manager.
Mayor, I would defer to other council members should they wish to make comments, and I can add some if that's the will of the mayor or the council.
Thank you. Does any council member wish to make a comment? Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you to all the people that were speaking tonight and whose letters and comments were read into the record as well. I appreciate that. Believe me, we hear everything that everybody says, and I certainly do and internalize it as well. I do want to mention that I was at the protest yesterday, and I know that Mr. Angus had mentioned that. Councilmember Waddell was there with me. In fact, at one point we were standing fairly close to each other. And what I noticed, I'll give you my personal point of view, and it mirrored what several other people had said. It was nonviolent. It was peaceful. There was certainly some difficult and challenging speeches to hear, but everybody was respectful. And while there were tense moments, the crowd responded appropriately, I felt. This was at Civic Park. And it was good to see. It was freedom of assembly. And there were well over 1,000 people there. I don't know if there was an official count, but it was good. It was good to see people's First Amendment rights being held up. There was also some aggression, verbal aggression, I should say, that was at the police line in front of City Hall. There was a barrier in between. There were several dozen people that were protesting and shouting at the police. And again, that was difficult to hear. I was right next to them. And I thought the police responded at that time, again, appropriately. They didn't raise even an eyebrow. They just stood still and listened to everybody. And eventually those protesters moved on as well. When everybody left the park, and I was one of the last to leave the park, I want to emphasize this. There was not a scrap of paper on the ground. Everybody picked up after themselves and left the park in excellent condition, which I think was probably a concern that anybody has whenever there's a protest that is called for. I was happy to see that. I followed the marchers down Broadway. When they turned left onto Ignacio, I drove back with my son. I parked just across the street from Ignacio. I did not see anything that happened and did not personally experience anything that happened after that. But I do want to say that up until that point anyway, it was as respectful and peaceful a march, as an assembly and rally as I could have hoped for. And again, I'm proud that we saw that in the heart of Walnut Creek at that moment. And again, I can't speak for anything else that happened after that, but I did want to mention that. And again, I thank everybody for their comments tonight.
Any other council members wish to make a comment?
I'll go.
Okay, Justin, please.
Thank you, Mayor. I too want to echo Mr. Wilkes' comments about thanking everyone that came here to speak tonight very passionately about their perspectives. I think this is what makes Walnut Creek great, the ability and the individuals interested in the public and in Walnut Creek and beyond that are willing and able to come down and speak clearly about injustices that they see in our community and in our society to hopefully drive change for the next generation and, of course, hopefully change in our communities today. I also want to thank the halls. I want to thank them very deeply for their continued push for mental health change and changes in our communities. As I've spoke before, this is something that's very near and dear to my heart, as I'm sure many of those watching tonight, I have mental health issues in my family, and it's an ongoing challenge. And I feel for the halls for what they've gone through. especially on this day, on the anniversary of his death. It brings tear to my eyes to even think about one of my children going through this. So on behalf, I'm sure I can speak on the council on their behalf. Our condolences are just as passionate today as they were a year ago when this occurred. I was proud to support the Mental Health Awareness Month proclamation, and as it sounds like the mayor, I proudly shown my ribbon in front of my house for the Mental Health Awareness Month. I also want to thank, as did the Mayor Pro Tem, as he stated, I was at the protest yesterday. I want to thank all the nonviolent protesters that came out. As Mr. Wilkes said, there were a lot of passionate statements going on, but by and large, it was very respectful. The protesters picked up after themselves, which I too did notice, and we appreciate. But more importantly, they came down by and large and stated their position very clearly about what they expect from our leadership and from the community at large, and the changes that they would like to see. It was eye-opening and very educational to hear all the speakers that got up to speak about their perspectives and their interactions with officers and with other individuals in our communities, and the changes in which they would like to see. And that's why I'm confused, but also interested in meeting with individuals that don't see the changes in which we are actively partaking here in City Hall. We have designated a large portion prior to the events in the last week of our management team to working with both Seth and others in our community to drive the exact changes in which the group is asking for. We are just as dedicated as you are to bringing nonviolent responses to all circumstances when it's justified and needed, especially when there's mental health issues. Now, that's not to say that we're always perfect, but we are very dedicated, both as a council and as a city organization. Again, I can't stress how much time we have designated from a management team, that's Dan and the individuals that report directly to Dan, in addressing the issues that have been brought to our attention. And that's just not on the nonviolent response. That's also with looking at our police policies to ensure that we are not only meeting the needs of the people connected to FOSFEF, but also the chief has created a organization, a team, a community-based organization within the police department in order to provide direct community feedback to how we operate as a police organization. And that also goes into diversity training, and then of course, to the greatest extent possible, de-escalation training for our officers and education to our community about how we operate on a daily basis. I am perplexed by this repetitive response that we're getting back that we are not taking action. I can guarantee you that everyone on this council, everyone in the management organization on down through the officers that are just coming on board are actively involved in pushing our community forward with taking these requests into account. All my information is online. If you have comments, please reach out. I'm very interested in hearing how we can be doing more. And as Mr. Buckshire has said multiple times, there are more activities that are coming out. Unfortunately, COVID and other things have affected our timelines. But I can guarantee everyone, I want to stress this, that we are actively involved in this. We just had a meeting prior to this meeting on the situation. And we are dedicated to ensuring that the voices are heard and that action is actually taken. And I look forward to driving that to conclusion.
Thank you. Councilmember Francois.
Thank you, Mayor. And I want to thank first I want to thank Councilmember Waddell for those eloquent comments, because I think he captured what probably a lot of us are thinking and feeling. And I appreciate him summarizing what I believe we all feel has been a good faith, wholehearted effort on behalf of our staff to be responsive, to look inside and internal to see whatever we can do to affect positive change in the community. I want to thank all the callers who called in. The only thing I really want to convey is my deep condolences to the Hall family, to Ton and Scott and Alexis, and I'm sorry for your loss. And I applaud Ton for being a fierce advocate for Miles and for, attempting to ensure that something positive comes out of his death. And I think I have no doubt that she'll be successful in that. And one of the last speakers who spoke, Leslie Shafton, I think captured it well. And I think this captures what all of us as a council are committed to, which is compassionate and innovative leadership, and whatever we can do to enact policies or changes to save future lives. We all share that view. And we're all sickened and disheartened by photos that we see coming out of Minnesota and other places. And we know that that's just one photo because that was captured on one iPhone. And it's happened a lot more than that. And it sickens and saddens us, but I'm also kind of heartened by George Floyd's brother and his call for a peaceful reaction to that. That yes, this cannot stand, but it also is something that we as a society can address through peaceful, non-violent means, like Dr. King taught us so well. So I'm hopeful that as we go forward in the future, that we'll have a more positive and productive dialogue. I too support and supported the mental health declaration. Tonight is the second anniversary of the death of my dear uncle by suicide. So I too am very familiar with mental health and its crippling effect on people, and the need for help at all levels. And I'd like to see that happen in not only in our community, but in the larger society as a whole. And so I just want to convey my thoughts, for my prayers of peace and good feelings toward the Hall family tonight, and prayers for comfort and healing for our community.
Councilmember Silva, I check that.
Thank you very much, Mayor. And I'm going to echo the words of my colleagues and thank all of those who have taken the time tonight to join us in these very challenging circumstances. This must be I'm trying to think in my head, this has to be at least 15 of these meetings for the city, whether they're council meetings or committee meetings, that we have had to do in this environment where we can't be in a room together. We are challenged with the limits of what this environment offers as we try to work our way through this pandemic and the significant challenges that presents, while at the same time trying to address the issues that were on our plate before we were so rudely interrupted in mid-March with the pandemic. I agree with my colleagues that we have been making progress, but I understand how frustrating it is that it isn't as rapid or clear as people might like. It can be very frustrating, but there are numerous things that we know that have happened. We have been working with the county on their crisis intervention and mental health response team that is available, and how do we ensure and help to ensure that the members of our community that need that assistance see that as an alternative, and know when to step into that? And how does our police department know when to call on them versus a PD response? The Chiefs Advisory Committee has probably had 4 meetings and have been addressing issues and looking the policies for the department. And talking about de-escalation strategies and what can be done differently, in addition to whether it's tasers or the beanbags we already had and the other tools that could be available to our organization. And also talking about crisis intervention training at a regional level, because we are, if nothing else, Central Contra Costa with all of our other agencies. We work together, and oftentimes when we need to be able to de-escalate a crisis, our police officers are side by side with those from Lafayette and Pleasant Hill and Concord, because the crisis involves more than one agency. And so I'm hopeful that when our meetings return to normal, maybe it won't be the same issues, but when our meetings return to normal, we can actually have more comprehensive presentation to council and discussion of what the chief and the advisory committee are seeing and looking at and recommending, and what the county system really involves, so that we can have a discussion of it. Very difficult in this environment, but hopefully we're back together within another 30 to 45 days, where we can convene in a room and be appropriately socially distanced, but be able to do that. And again, I will close by my heartfelt condolences to the Hall family and to the neighbors and family and friends who have lost someone that was dear to them. There is no replacing someone, but there is hopefully an opportunity to have some change come as a result of what happened.
I saw it. Kevin, please.
Thank you. And one of the disadvantages about going first is I don't have a lot of time to collect my thoughts, and suddenly I stopped speaking for a few seconds, and I realized that I certainly wanted to address something that was important to everybody who spoke tonight, and that was mental health. And it being Mental Health Awareness Month, and my brother suffered from a mental health disability. He was bipolar, and eventually that led to a number of things into his death, early death as well. And my heart goes out to the Hall family, certainly in dealing with that and in understanding what mental health there is, and what we can do about that. And one thing I've been most impressed with in speaking with the Halls and members of the public that are close to them, including those with FOSAF, is that what can we do to make sure that this doesn't happen to another family? As members of the Hall family and other friends, we want to make sure that this isn't experienced by anybody else. And what can we do about that? I appreciate what staff has been doing. The city manager, I'd like to ask you one thing, and that is, when you do speak, if you could let us know something about other alternatives that are being discussed in how can, if there is an incident where normally police would be called, how could another group be called? I know that we've talked in the past about cahoots, and I believe there was the Wisconsin model, but if you could just give us an update on that, I think that would be helpful for me to hear. And so again, deep condolences to the Hall family, and as well as certainly George Floyd and his family, which had nothing to do with mental health, and just a heinous murder and crime committed in full view of now the country. And we do need to do our best to make sure that this doesn't happen again. It's terrible to watch, it's terrible to feel, and I know that we all want our society, and Walnut Creek included, to be a better place. So thank you.
I'm going to try and answer your question, Kevin, and that's to say that there is an organization, as you have heard, in the county that is available to come in circumstances when there is a serious mental break, and they are prepared to do it. It is more the role of the county to handle the direct hands-on mental health responsibility than it is for the city. They're the ones with the trained specialists. They're the ones with the experience that we have. As much as we will try to meet every one of the FOSES and other reasonable people's requests, we aren't in a place where everybody is going to have a deep social training, and we can't get people up to the level of people who focus on mental health. We can do what we can do, and we will do what we can do, but the correct source of most of the saving is at the county level, and we are working with them and other cities to bring forth the county so A, people who need their services will know how to get them, and B, to beef up their services so that they meet the needs of the county on a 24/7 basis. So that being said, that leaves me with the other awkward position, being last and trying to find something new and incredibly important to say. I have spent a lot of time as mayor trying to find ways to communicate my support. There is a message on the website from me, written from my heart. I have long been a proponent of social justice and equality amongst all people of the United States, and that color should not be a barrier, or economic start, or any of that. Everybody in America should have as much of a chance of success as anybody born in Walnut Creek or Beverly Hills or anywhere else in the world. I truly believe that I have worked to make opportunity available. I have years on the Kennedy King Scholarship Fund that funds scholarship opportunities for young people of color, from transitioning from community college to four-year schools. And with that comes a mentoring responsibility as well. I have lived my beliefs that everybody is created equal, and I will continue to do that. I will broadcast that it's unacceptable for any other standard by anybody else in this country. We need to get together. We need to do what we need to do. I can't say it anymore. I can't behave it any more than I have done over my life. I hope you understand that deep in my heart is passion for the Hall family, is passion for everyone who is going through difficult times, who has lost their jobs, who has had their stores destroyed, who gets up in the morning and thinks, I just can't put one more foot in front of the other. This is Walnut Creek. We will and do make opportunities. And I hope, instead of trying to find only the ways that we don't do it as well as you want to, that you actually start looking for the ways that we are successful, and participate in those efforts as passionately as you do to bring about the necessary changes you've pointed out tonight. With that, I say good night. I have some technical business to do, to announce that, for the record, items 5A through C will not be heard tonight, but will be carried forward and considered at the next part of this meeting. And I'm going to probably use the wrong word, city attorney, but I am going to close this meeting, and we will tonight, and we will reopen the next part of this regular meeting on June 9th at 6 p.m. Please join us then. Thank you and good night.